I literally would do this, Ian. I'd I'd go onto the field. I'd look around. I'd look every person up, all of the competitors, all of the opposition,
Yeah.
and I would say to myself, I literally say to I can still remember me saying this to myself: I'm better than every one of you.
I work with some absolute legends in my 18 years at Fox Sports. Today's guest, Anthony Nobilia, is one of those legends. Today, you're going to learn a heap about the importance of self-belief, of having a strong mindset, whether it's in a sporting environment, in business. But the bit I want you to pay most attention to is just how valuable change can be, especially when it's thrust upon you from circumstances completely outside of your control, when it might feel like your whole world's caving in, but just what opportunities are available on the other side of change. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Hi, Anthony.
Well, Ian, good to see you, mate. Looking well, as usual. Always, I remember you looking this handsome last time I saw you, mate, which was more than 4 years ago or something, wasn't it?
Mate, it would be. When did you leave Fox?
Well, 2014, no, 2010, I left Fox. So, yeah,
So
it's
that
14
long.
years. Mm,
Yeah, right.
mm,
We had some good times together working,
mm.
but most importantly on the football field for the Fox Sports six-a-side team, right?
Wasn't that a lot of fun? When time's different then, hey?
Absolutely. We probably both had far less responsibilities on our plate back then, shall we say?
Well, which I believe, which allowed us to, to be more so the people who we could be. You know what I mean? It just gave us more reign to explore different avenues. These days, I feel with all the regulations and rules and do's and don'ts, it's difficult to express yourself in the way that you'd want to, and you're too afraid to offend or say the wrong thing. So I promised you earlier, just off camera, that I won't be swearing too much today. But yeah, there's things in life that come at you that you probably, as you would know, don't expect, and you just handle them in your own way.
Absolutely. Now, we share that. Well, I've got to say also, after your very kind compliments, given you've been living in the Whitsundays for the last 14 years, you're looking
Yeah,
pretty chilled out yourself, mate. Feeling
yeah.
pretty healthy.
Chilled is the word. Healthy as well, as you can see. I probably put in a bit of beef, but mate, life up here is just simpler. It's just I think it was how Sydney might have been 30, 40 odd years ago. The population is low. There's a lot of space up here. There's a lot of beautiful open spaces, gorgeous
Yeah.
wildlife. Rainforests, oceans, mountains. It's that kind of thing. It's just absolutely. I'm not sure if you can see behind me, but we live in a very, very green area, and we feel very fortunate for that, particularly coming from Sydney, where it's all a concrete jungle.
Yeah, love it. And my wife and I have been plotting our escape of Sydney as well, so we'll have to talk some more. Now, we shared love of football, but love of sport in general, and that was from our days at Fox Sports.
Mm.
Now, my memory of you was that because you had already started there, I'm sure when I started, always that whole football department, very approachable, very kind and helpful, and to me that's a big part of not just that work environment, but that's been my experience in football too, right? It's just such a welcoming space for people of all backgrounds. Now, I know you played a lot of football as a youngster. Was that your experience growing up as well?
Depending on what level you're talking at, at the highest level, no, it's not like that at all. At a community level, it's different. Absolutely, it's welcoming and it's open arms and it's all that kind of stuff. Grassroots is very important, and that's the attitude that people have to have. It's you've got to be welcoming. At the higher level, I played state league for many years. I signed a contract with an NSL club, so at that level, it's different. It's pretty stringent. It's closed. It's insular. It's restrictive. It's strict, very strict, and there's the different set of rules that you go by, particularly at the highest level. Definitely.
Yeah. So there'd be a lot of people listening that would be haven't had a similar experience. Maybe they're going through something similar with their children now, and that's been my experience with my young fella at that level as well. It's not an environment conducive to bring out people's best. That's not to say that you can't create a belief system within yourself to be able to still thrive. What did you learn through those times when it was, your ability to express yourself was limited, your, like you said, it's very strict and controlled. What did you learn about yourself from a perspective of resilience and self-confidence through those times?
A personal thing was probably that I wasn't suitable for the highest level of football. Not due to any lack of enthusiasm, maybe even ability or skill, to be honest. Possibly because I didn't want to be shackled by those rules and regulations that are let's face it, they're necessary if you want to make it to the highest level, mate. If you want to be about 1% of people that make it to the highest level, you've got to be disciplined. And I've always lacked that discipline or that authoritarian sort of attitude, and I never reacted to it very well either. So, and then still to this day, I don't like people telling me how I should or shouldn't do things. It's one of those things.
Yeah,
Personal trait.
yeah. That's not necessarily the worst trait, right? Like we have to be able to have that independent thought. We just got to get that balance right, which I'm sure you've learned over your business journey, which we'll get to a bit later. Just coming back to that childhood time, like you're one of the most talented footballers I played with. So you obviously had a lot of natural skill from a young age. Did you have a sporting dream when you were a kid?
I actually wanted to be a racing car driver, right? But my believe it or not, true story. My mum never supported that. She liked me playing soccer because it was less a dangerous sport, of course.
Yeah,
So yeah, look, my dream was to be a racing car driver. The secondary dream was definitely to play at the highest level of football, and started playing when I was 4 years old with my dad and my brother in the backyard. So any youngster playing at that age, and literally until I was maybe 48, never missed except for a spate of injuries, a major injury, apart from 18 months. Never missed a season of football from the age of 5 years old.
yeah,
So that in itself would tell you that I wanted to be a professional footballer, and I took it out, and I took it to, the ages where I probably was out of that sort of realm. But there was certainly a time, in my early 20s, late teens, that the possibilities were there, and that reality made it uh, inspired me more to make it a dream. And when I signed that contract for an under 21s on our sales side,
yeah.
I knew I was going in the right direction. Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool. I didn't actually know that. Which club was it?
Like our Tigers.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Um, you mentioned your mum and your dad, and they're so important through our life, of course, but the sporting journey. I know Ange Postecoglou talks about it a lot, about how that going with his dad to watch the football, it was
Mm.
a place where he didn't speak a lot of English, so his dad, that is. So it was a place where his dad belonged and was part of was with his people and community, and he came alive in that sort of space. Do you have memories around that with your parents around the positive impact they had through that time?
I just remember, Ian, the support they gave me in terms of being there when I played, taking the time out to take me to training sessions when I, wasn't driving, taking me to the games, all that kind of stuff. And that's, at the time, you probably think that's their obligation, but later on in life, you realise, man, they didn't have to do all that. They didn't have to sacrifice that. They had, money to make, lives to live, children to feed, all that kind of stuff, and taking the time out. Now, more so after, when you get to a certain age, you understand that kind of stuff, is when you realise just the amount of sacrifice they made for you when you were young, for you to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when you have your own children, right, you get a deeper appreciation. I don't think you ever
Absolutely.
can until you have your own, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is your young fella a footballer?
Yeah, no, look, we've put him into an academy. He's training regularly, and I see the not 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 just the skill ability, but the ability to think about the game where it's not being played at the time, like off the ball, which is great trait to have. He
Yeah.
seems to understand that. Hang on, the ball's over there, but it's going to come here soon, so I should get ready. So he's got that mindset where he thinks ahead, which is great. But I don't see that competitiveness in him like I had. I was talking to someone up here just a little while ago, and this is going off his experience with me being here. So in my 40s playing football,
Yeah.
and he once said to me, he goes, Anthony, I'm not like you. I wouldn't want to win at all costs, right? So literally, even in my 40s, Ian,
Yeah.
playing community football, the perception of me was that I would try and win at all cost. Right? What does that tell you about me? Anyway, so I don't think he has that killer instinct. It's a social aspect for him. His friends go and play there. He knows he's good at it, so he enjoys playing it because he knows he's good at it as well. So there's a
Yeah.
few factors there, but socially, I think is the main thing, and that's what he enjoys about the sport at the moment.
Yeah, I think like that's the most important thing to really be emphasizing at that age, because we want them to make sure they're enjoying it. Like I've had conversations with ex like professional footballers talking about how they probably didn't actually enjoy the journey.
Right.
It was just there was so much pressure on it, and there was, the voice of their dad talking, in that background and all that sort of message. I think if you got that ability to read the play, which you can't teach, and he'll go through different stages where he'll find that competitive edge in a way that works for him. It's interesting that you say that, because that's probably the impression that people got of me as well, playing it at over 35s football, the
Right.
same sort of thing, right? Because we don't lose that competitive edge.
No, never.
But also that's a great trait to be able to then utilize in other areas of our life, right? And I
Well, yeah. Look,
imagine, go on.
no, you go on. You finish that.
I was going to say, well, you've been through. We'll come back to the childhood stuff, but I want to ask about this. You've got your own business there, and you have since you moved up there. That in itself requires you to have that competitive instinct to want to just keep moving forward and keep trying to win the game of business, regardless. But then also when you have something like you said, the 2017 cyclone up there, which basically destroyed your business, like
Mm.
you've really got to dig deep into those competitive urges, right?
Well, it's survival. It's survival. It's as simple as that, mate. I don't see it in any other way. Really, we literally went from a bustling business one day to the next day having nothing. Right.
Yeah.
So put yourself in that position. My wife wasn't pregnant at the time. We'd just been married a couple of years. So we didn't have the pressure of having to, raise a kid in between. But we had to start from scratch, to reassess everything and ask yourselves, where do we go from here again? That you're in your 40s, you just don't expect it. It's something that you don't expect. So I think yes, that competitive nature helped me through, and we got through it because we thought this isn't going to beat us. We're not going to let this silly little bloody cyclone affect our lives forever. But um, it has. It has affected our lives forever because we took a different path from there.
Yeah.
We were close to. We gave ourselves a plan. A time frame, and if we couldn't come up with a solution by that time frame, we probably would have left the area. To search for something else.
I'm a big believer that when those moments happen, those really tough moments, they actually end up being one of the greatest blessings because of a forced change of direction that perhaps we needed to take anyway. I've been through, I was going to say far too many. They always end up in better places, but I just now I guess I keep reminding myself as like, okay, this is actually going to be a good thing. You'll look back at this, and it was that been the experience for you? Like, has it put you into it did? Yes, you're not going to let it change your life, but if you reframe that as, well, it's not going to change your life in a negative way necessarily for the rest of your life, but it's definitely changed your life. And how was that for the better?
Well, let me just start by saying that those that don't embrace change or don't accept change are holding themselves back from ever becoming what they can truly become.
Love it.
I mean, how are you supposed to know what you're best at if all you've ever done and if all you've ever pursued is one path? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether it's forced on you or not, mate, change is the single greatest gift of life can give you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I strongly believe that, whether it's having children when you weren't expecting it, whether it's changing careers when you didn't really expect it, whether it's being fired and having to start again or losing your job for whatever reason, whether
Yeah.
it's, having a life, a heart attack, whatever it is, survival.
Yeah.
It's the greatest gift life can give you, simple as that. And those that don't go through that, I feel for them. I really do. I wonder who they could be if they had, challenged themselves in that way.
Oh, 100%. And I only had this conversation the other day with my wife about like the stuff that we've both gone through. And it's like, you wouldn't change it because it's just opened up so many new opportunities. Yes, there are certain things that would have been better if they didn't happen, but would it have led us to this path? And I can't reconcile it any other way. It's like exactly like you described. It's the best thing. So importantly, though, you need to be able to develop the resilience and the resourcefulness to be able to navigate that. So you mentioned getting fired from a job. You've had the big setback there with the business. What is what are some of the sort of key learnings that you took through that time and being able to come out the other side?
Let's uh, let's put this in perspective. I only know what I'm doing now in my 50s.
Love it.
My teens, my 20s, my 30s, my 40s were all a learning journey, mate. You know,
Yeah.
and if I could go back and tell myself, my teen self one thing, is to take your time, just learn. I've been told by a few people that your 50s is your culmination of everything that you've learnt throughout your life, and between your 50s and your 60s, in a business sense, but also in a personal sense,
Yeah.
you then concentrate on what you've learnt and perfect it in your 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah.
And I'm only 51, but I'm actually starting to see that come to fruition now, particularly in a business sense. Although I've only been in business since I've been up here almost 15 years, um, the lessons I've learned prior to being here now, I'm certainly putting into place now, because the one main lesson in a business sense was never put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from my personal business experience, that's the one lesson I've literally learned, particularly being up here with such a vulnerable climate,
Yep.
and such a volatile area for weather events. You have to put that, you have to make that, you have to have the contingency plan, basically.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and luckily we didn't at the time after Debbie. Let me just get this straight. We didn't have a contingency plan.
Yep.
We had no plan. We didn't know what to do, and that's why now, if the same thing occurred now, we'd be much more prepared for it.
And that's often the case for people when they have their big setback, right? They're not prepared. And
Right.
that's why it's such a big learning process when you're ready to embrace the learning. You're not ready to embrace it when it first happens, right?
No, in fact, you shut it out, and that's naturally what you
Yep.
do as a person. You can't be told, how to or how not to do things.
Yep.
But it's just later in life that you realise that those lessons you were being taught, you didn't really know at the time. So
Yeah.
you just got to have some reflection.
Yeah. And I just wanted to come back to what you said there before about the not working it out until later in life, because I was the same. It wasn't
Mm.
until my 40s until I worked out what I was meant to do. I used to joke with people, I don't know what I want to do. I'll let you know who I want to be when I grow up. And I love how you've described that, because it takes the pressure off. And I was just drawn to thinking about how many parents put way too much pressure on their children to to get them into a certain position, when the reality is there's so many different paths to where you need to go. And I think one of the greatest parts of what we learn going through these challenging times is to be able to bring a completely different outlook to our children, right?
Absolutely. And look, let's face it, not everyone's the same. And, some people know what they wanted to do from when they were young, pursue that path and continue on until they pass away. And good on them. I can hand on my heart tell you that my wife, Eliza, I'm not sure whether you worked with her or not, but she knew at the age of 12 what she wanted to do, and she achieved all that by the time she was 25.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the journey. You put your mind to something, you achieve it young, you get to a certain age and go, yeah, what next?
Yeah.
The challenge is over, really. And not that was her case, but she'd achieved a lot in a short amount of time because she put so much effort into achieving that when she was young. So her dream had come to fruition. And then I came into the picture, of course, and stuffed everything up for her. So, and so that's our story. But everyone's different. All kids are different. And I try and tell my kid, when I ask him what you want to be, I love his answer. His answer is the most precious thing in the world. He says everything.
Love it.
Literally, I say, what do you think you might want to be? He goes, everything. And I encourage him to take on as many challenges as possible, to bring it all on. Just open your arms, mate, and just suck life in and chew it up and spit it out. Whether you end up on the street, beleaguered and freaking desperate, or whether you're a multi-billionaire one day, as long as you're freaking happy, and I believe you're only happy once you know you've taken a bite out of every fruit in that basket, man. Because if you don't, you'll die wondering.
100%. And that's not to say that every piece of fruit is yours for the tasting, but it means that the ones that are meant to, that you absolutely should go after, because exactly that, you don't want to die wondering. And I think that if we look at that sporting analogy, you don't want to walk off the field at full time thinking, what if I'd backed myself in that chance? What if I'd taken that opportunity?
Right. And that, I guess that's, from a pragmatic point of view, practical point of view, I did that on the sporting field. I literally would do this, Ian. I'd go onto the field. I'd look around. I'd look every person up, all of the competitors, all of the opposition, and I would say to myself, I literally say to myself, I can still remember me saying this to myself: I'm better than every one of you. I'm going to show you what I've got, and you will be in awe of me. And that's what I used to say. I used to think, whether it was true or not, that I was the best player on that field at that time. And I think that's the only attitude that an athlete looking to achieve the best that they can possibly achieve has to have that attitude, right, to some degree.
100%. And if you listen to any of them talk, they all talk about the same thing. What separates the elite and the next level elite? And it's their belief.
Well, when have you heard a coach say, yeah, we're here to come second, or we're here to, lose on penalties or something like that? Nah, mate. No way. We're here to win. When we wouldn't be here if we weren't. And that, that's a collective as a team, that's as an individual as well, because within a team there are individuals. And if you've got a team of individuals that believe that they are, capable of reaching those goals and winning, you've got a good team on your hands. But, coaching is very important. This is where people like you come in. Coaching is very important. You can't just have that raw. You've got to harness that energy. You've got to harness that ability within yourself and others around you, similar to teaching your kids how to do things at a young age. It's the same thing. It's all about harnessing that energy, isn't it? To hopefully produce something that is successful. We've got a bin truck here, so it might actually make a bit of noise. If it's making too much noise, just let me know and we'll resume it. But it's going to be hanging around for 5 minutes or so.
That's all good. It just allows people to drift off and think about what it's like to be on holidays where the where they're in that sort of setting, which is exactly those who are just listening. The backdrop here behind Anthony is amazing. I think it's really important, particularly if you're looking at about a young person's journey through sport, is that concept of winning's everything is not what you want to be fostering at a young age, because the reality of sport is there's different ways of marking success, right? Success comes in. Go on.
Well, I don't know whether you know this of me. I was the general manager of Mackay football for 2 years.
No.
And so I picked up a role as the general manager of football in Mackay, which meant this is administrating the entire competition to everyone. So basically, from its structure to its the draw to the regulations, the rules, all that kind of stuff. That was my responsibility for 2 years, and I enjoyed it. And the one thing I learned was that as an administrator, you have to make it attainable. You have to make it accessible, right?
Yeah.
To people for them to want to play, because if not, in Australia in particular, there's other options for them. So if they're not going to play soccer because you make it too hard for them or too expensive, they'll just go play rugby league, whatever the case may be, or hockey or whatever, which is great. They've got to play something. But what I learned through that was you've got to make the sport accessible to them, to as many, as broadly as possible. And I think teaching a kid to just go out on the field and enjoy themselves, particularly after, as administrators, we've made it accessible to them and given them the opportunity to enjoy it on a social level, then instilling that in a kid will, I think, eventually, to the right ones, it will change their attitude towards the game in future. Once they enjoy it, they can then see a clearer path for them in terms of, whether they can pursue it further or not. If they're not enjoying it from the beginning, forget it. There's no chance at all.
Yeah.
So you have to allow a kid to enjoy their sport. Yeah. First of all,
100%. Yeah, 100%. We do a lot of work at our club around the values of what we want to stand for, and the top of that list is we want to make sure the child comes back the next year.
That's right.
And
that's exactly right.
And if you're creating an environment where they're feeling too pressured, or they're not enjoying it, or they don't feel like they belong, well, then you lose them. And that's sad, because we never want them to experience that. We want them to feel like they always enjoy the experience. If they choose to go elsewhere, that's a different thing. But if they choose because of the pressure, or because they're not enjoying it, or because of copying grief from people they shouldn't, well, then that's the different story altogether.
Well, let me give you a perfect example of what I was talking about. Basically, when I took over as general manager there, it was in at the beginning of the 2020 season, right? So as we all remember, something happened in 2020 that we all weren't expecting, which was COVID.
Yep.
Now, I made the conscious effort that, our team of administrators would make sure that everyone knew that our competition was going ahead. It didn't matter to me whether it started 2 months, 3 months later, but we would do everything in our power to make the competition go ahead. And in fact, we did. We started it in June, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to March. It started in June. It went for 12 weeks instead of 21 weeks. But at the end of that season, everyone I spoke to about it was so grateful that we had done that, that we kept the competition alive. And not only that, we got people from other sporting codes because their sporting code simply decided that it was too hard, and that was that. And I'm kind of proud of that. I'm proud of that, achievement that our administration, achieved. And it's because of that we've retained a lot of players, like you said, because they've repaid us the loyalty. And not only that, they grew to love the sport. Maybe played it for the first time, realised, hey, it's not as hard as I thought it might have been, and B, I've joined other like-minded people who just want to have a great old kick around and a laugh and a beer after the game. Fantastic. My life is full, so
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's what it's all about.
So good. When you were a young fella, you talked about, you had that sporting dream. Did you have or can you recall your happiest sporting memory when you were young?
There are a few moments, yeah, but I think playing at the state league level. We talked about how difficult it was playing at state league, right, and national level, I guess. More so state league because I had far more experience there, 13 years.
Yep.
To break down those barriers, to come through the other side of all those restrictions put on you, and to achieve a grand final win or something or other, and to be in a physical state to have contributed in that game and that season, that's the best feeling a sportsman can have. To
Yeah.
actually think that they have contributed to the success of the team. And I was lucky enough to win 3 state league trophies, right, with various clubs. And in each time except for once, actually 4 except for one, I can honestly say to you that I contributed a whole lot, right? And I'm very proud of that. And I look back at that with fond memories. So it's not a one sporting achievement where I feel as though it all culminated. But I think for me, it was more of the fact that I consistently could produce the level of play that kept me going at that level for such a long time.
Love it. Why were you able to have that consistency? You talked before about that mindset of like, I'm the best player here and I'm going to prove that. Was it more than that? Why were you able to have that level of consistency for so long?
Well, I was blessed with physical attributes. So I'm basically what they used to call naturally fit. So I didn't really have to go out of my way to gain fitness. I had good muscle memory, and and even in the off season, I put on a bit of weight. I would quickly lose that weight coming into the season, and I was strong. I had muscular legs. I had physical capabilities. So I was fast and strong, and for a small guy, as you probably remember, I was quite small. I quite often heard my competitors really. One guy said to me, he goes, "I wasn't expecting you to hit me that hard," you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I heard a lot, and I think the center of gravity, my balance, and my physical attributes, the fact that I was fit and strong, allowed me to continue that level of success throughout my career anyway. So, sure, it was a mental thing as well. Yes, you need that attitude, but if I didn't have the physical attributes, forget it. Not at that level anyway.
Oh, 100%. And that's my memory of you as well. Like that low center of gravity, it's almost like you were gliding across, sometimes almost on an angle, right? Able to change
Right.
direction at speed. I also know that mental side has to be a part of it, right? Because there's thousands of kids that have got physical capabilities to play at next level, but as you know, not all of them do. Not all of them are able to move from one level to the next level to the next level. And we all know that kid that was endlessly gifted but never really made it. So was it something your parents instilled in you that gave you that mental strength? Like, it would have been more than just the evidence of what you'd experienced previously thinking you were that good, like more than just the physical capabilities. There must have been some elements that you learned along the way that allowed you to have that mental strength over people that separated you.
That was my mum.
Yeah.
That was definitely my mum. She and I had this discussion with my wife just recently. I remember her saying to me, I'll never judge you. I'll never hold anything against you. Um, I'll never, I'll always try to understand you, what you're going through, and I'll always try and help you. So, in terms of if you ever need anyone to talk about anything with, I'm your person. And that sets you up for life. Simple as that. Right? That's foundation. That an amazing strength that my mum had when I was a kid to tell me that, and not only to walk to talk, but to walk the walk. Because I remember going to her and saying, things to her that, mate, I wouldn't even admit to myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And she would just go, right, well, let's analyze the situation. What do we do from here? What are our options? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? How do you want to grow from this? Have you done this before? Have others done it? Have you spoken to others about it? All those conversations that we had
Yeah.
when I was in trouble, mate. Seriously, even as I was 17 at the first one of the first times, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you what the conversation was about. But the reaction from my mum was such a powerful. Um, it instilled such a powerful belief within me that everything was going to work out fine.
Love that. What a gift from your mum. I'm getting tingles through that because what you're describing there is unconditional love. And
Exactly.
we've grown up in a society that's very not just conditional but transactional. And
No,
he's got to have a trade off the judgment that is present across society.
right,
But that's I learned that the hard way with my parenting, being able to come from that place of no judgment because my initial reaction was to fix or to give the other person involved a leave pass because they're going through this and this instead of just listening and without judgment. And I think that's probably for me that was something that my children actually taught me.
right.
Do you like what we talked about before about the being a product of our environment? Was that something that was just part of your mum's upbringing as well, or was that a product of her having to go through tough times?
Yeah, I think very much so. Mum was born in Sicily, Italy. Um, Dad was born in Rome. These were war times. These Second World War time. I'm talking, the early 40s. My grandparents came out here after the World War, after World War Two. So yes, definitely, of course, mate. They did it in that regard from a humanitarian point of view. They did it much tougher than we did. Right? They
Yeah,
learned resilience through survival at at the most critical point in their lives. Literally eat to survive.
yeah,
That of course instills a belief in you that if you can do that, you can literally achieve anything. And so that was her. My mum's achieved a lot in her life when most people would have written her off or thought, not possible. She's achieved many great things, and 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 the center of that inspiration or motivation for her to achieve that stuff was us, her kids.
yeah. Wow.
That's it.
Yeah,
There was no other motivation. She wanted to make sure that her kids grew up with everything. And when I say everything, I don't mean 78-inch bloody
material.
TV.
Yeah,
Yeah. She wanted to make sure that we had everything within us to give us the belief that we can uh, take on any challenges through life to make sure we survive. And that's, mate, she's done that perfectly.
yeah. Wow. What about your dad? Was he a footballer?
Dad passed away when I was 19, so very early in life.
Yeah,
And he was he was very supportive of my football. He loved coming to watch me play and always tried to give me advice and would analyze the game or my performance or whatever and try and give me advice on how to better myself and all that kind of stuff. But he had limitations. There were some things that I wouldn't consider life lessons in a positive way. I'd consider life lessons in a negative way. So
yeah,
I've learned a lot of stuff from people showing me how not to do things. Not that he's one of those people, but he did say to me once. He once said to me, "This lingers on in my life, in my head forever." And
hmm.
this was when I was 15 or 16. He said, always hang out with people you think are better than you, because you learn a lot more and you strive to be who they are, right?
Yeah.
He goes, don't waste your time with people you don't respect. Don't waste your time with those that you don't think aren't pulling their weight, with those that aren't, achieving their best. And he didn't say it that eloquently because he was an Italian guy. He didn't. His English was obviously his second language.
Yeah.
Although he grew up wanting to be a journalist, he was very intelligent. But that's the one lesson I get from him. And yeah, sure, there's some degree of truth to that. You learn things off everyone, whether their status is of the highest or the lowest. It doesn't matter. You learn things off everyone. You know.
Yep.
So the lessons you learn are what you take from them, not what people tell you. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's as simple as that. The lessons you learn are what you take from that lesson, not what you've been told or not what you hear. It's how you interpret that lesson. Yeah.
Oh, it's so strong. And I think about Australian society of just how blessed and improved we are from the different backgrounds that have come here over different times from challenging parts of
Mm.
times in history, parts of the world. And the thing that really stands out from the people I've spoken to that are sort of second, third generation Australians is that sense of community and all those things that you were describing that your mum was saying. That to me is like, well, if we had more of that sort of
Mm.
attitude, that humanitarian attitude that you talked about there, what you rightly brought to that role as the head administrator for Mackay football,
Mm.
like if we can be passing more of that down to our children, to communities, that's how we're going to improve things and improve them fast. And to me, that's why one of the real passions I have for sport in that area, because it has the ability to break down barriers that we're not able to in other places.
Well, mate, your values have changed these days. But you've got to see it this way. All these social media outlets and so on that are devaluing the way we bring, the young community up, gives us an opportunity to actually be different. It gives us an opportunity to take it back to, those core beliefs, those family beliefs. I think, to stand out is sometimes for the good, is sometimes, you might alienate yourself against, other people doing it the popular way. Fine, who cares
Yeah,
really?
yeah,
Um, but you will instill so much more into your kids if you decide not to go down that path. And this is the perfect opportunity to do it when it's rife, when it's everywhere you look. There's superficiality.
yeah.
Um, don't be like that. Simple as that. Don't be like that, and then you'll find you'll get a greater joy out of life. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I look at what you described about your mum and what I read in your bio about who you are and how many of those attributes that are passed on. We get our children get so much more from who we become, not what we tell them. And what you've just said there sums it up perfectly. It's like, if you want them to be able to change, if you want them to be able to be more of who they are, well, the best way to do that is to do it yourself. Buck the trend, go
Mm.
against the grain, forge a path, which, as you've described with your different challenges and setbacks, it's not always easy, but you've also described how full you feel as a result of taking that path. And to me, that's the gift is how you feel within yourself. The bonus gift that you can't comprehend is the impact it has on your children when they have a role model that's living and breathing that.
You'll never know that until they're older, right? You don't have that privilege of foresight until they get to an age where they can actually, like we can, put those lessons into life experiences. And my son's only 6, so that's not going to happen for a while. I was a late bloomer, so my first child at 45 or whatever it was. And now I've got a 9-month-old as well. So I'm a late
Congratulations.
bloomer. Thank you. But in saying that, my wife's 14 years younger than me, by the way. She keeps me young, keeps me on my toes. But the lesson there is that I probably wasn't ready for family life, in my early 20s and 30s, like a lot of people, decide to do. I was ready for family life in my 40s and 50s, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And it's just they keep me young, and now I can actually teach them stuff that I've learned that I can actually know to be true through experience, not just from what I've heard of others or read in books and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So actually teaching from experience, which is great, greatest lesson.
Yeah, I love it. I've got a 17-year-old and 20-year-old, so I can tell you that it absolutely does. You do see it, like from you'll probably start seeing it really soon if you're not already seeing it. Like even what you described about your oldest before, like saying how he described what he wanted to do. He wanted to do everything. About how some of the other things that you talked about, how he talks. Like to me, that's a direct product of what he's getting from his mum and dad, right? That positivity and that open to a whole lot of different possibilities. So I know that from my own experience is that the more that you do that, the more of that you will see. And I guess the other thing is being open to actually realize that they teach us so much more. We can let go of trying to control the whole environment and control their journey, and just give them space. It's it's a beautiful thing.
But even at 6, I'm not saying my son gives me life lessons, but he's teaching me that the younger generation do it slightly differently than when I was 6. You know what I mean? It's a different. They're being brought up at schools. The curriculum at schools is completely different to the curriculum when I was in year 6, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. I think that the values they're instilling in children these days at school is very encouraging. Very encouraging.
Agree. I will say that there's some elements of it, having sat down with both of mine and gone through some of the high school work, where I'm like, I'm not sure if this is beneficial compared to maybe some of the better life skills we could be teaching them. But that might be a whole other conversation. I don't want to necessarily dive into that.
No.
What transferable skills and tools and knowledge have you been able to take from your footballing journey, where you did hit some pretty decent heights, that you now are able to take with you into being a business owner, particularly when you've had to rebuild, and other roles that you've held over time?
Just that attitude that you can do this. Business isn't easy, as you know, and there are so many different scenarios, so many different environments that you operate within. And I think business is a combination of many different skill sets, and you're putting them all together in one go. Basically, you take lessons that you've learned from all aspects of your life, and you apply them to this business that you've started. And I think that the one thing that's made me at least be able to continue in a business environment is that attitude that I can do this. All right, things are tough, but and optimism is a very very valuable thing to have as a mindset. And I think without optimism, you don't have any hope. And if you strip yourself of hope, man, you got no chance. So you got to have hope that one day everything will work out the way you want it to work out, and that's the only driving force that you need. I think. Yeah, sure, you need to know marketing, and you need finance, all that kind of stuff. Auditing, and yeah, great. That all comes in handy. But if you don't tie that down with the hope that you're going to actually make all this work, forget it.
Yeah.
Stop wasting your time.
Yeah, absolutely. You can keep filling yourself with doubt and stories of why not. I remember one of my very influential bosses, going back probably about 12, 13 years. He talked about people used to ask, why me? And he said, and I remember hearing people say that and just thinking, well, why not me?
Right.
Why not this happened to me? What can I learn from this? What can I take from this? And just having that really simple shift in attitude changes everything. So I love that. Optimism, huge. If you look at where you're at now, and you sort of wear a few different hats in the business that you do. Well, firstly, photographer. Like when you're at Fox Sports, you weren't behind the camera. You weren't. It was actually quite a different role. How do you? Was photography something that you always had a hobby for? Was it something that you picked up late and you'd had a natural knack for? Because I see the synergies there around football, how you would have seen the world differently on the football field, which is how you've already described it. Was it a similar thing? Like you could just see things with your photography that other people couldn't?
Yeah, they often say that you know, if you don't have the eye for photography, you can't teach it. Right? So
Yeah.
and that goes with anything really.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it was a natural thing, mate. I think I had the eye for it from the beginning. I did study photography at university,
Yeah.
and that put me in good stead. Not that I pursued it straight after uni, but what I learned at uni gave me that, you know, foundation, gave me that, you know, understanding of it, I guess, you know, to a degree where I could take it a bit further. But, you know, those skills that I learned in television, framing, lighting, timing, all that kind of stuff, you know, they were applicable skills in in photography. Same thing, really. So when I left Fox, and as much as at the time I didn't want to, um, and I wasn't, not that I was forced to. We won't go into why I wanted to leave, but the the transition was simple, really simple. In fact, I did actually take photos for the Fox Sports website before leaving Fox.
Yeah.
They sent me up to Bathurst 2 years in a row, and I did some photos up there, and that's when I realised, right, this is absolutely fantastic because I can look at a subject in any way, shape, or form, from any angle that I want to capture it from. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I love most about photography. You know, the fact that whether the person or the subject knew or not that you were taking the photo of them, particularly inanimate objects. Inanimate objects are very easy to take photographs of, but the 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 um, the possibilities are endless. Possibilities are endless. If you look at something straight on, you're missing the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a as a creative mind, I guess I've got a bit of creative mind. I realised that just opened up a world of interpretation. You know, I could take a photo in a way that people could interpret it differently in their own way, literally in their own way, and that's what I loved about photography. And when I came to the Whitsundays, I'd already lined up a job as a photographer, and that was it. Just I guess it happened serendipitously because I met someone who told me about this amazing job they had on Daydream Island as a photographer,
Yeah.
and it just sounded just sounded so good because as you probably remember, Fox didn't have any windows, right?
Yeah.
You're stuck in those editing booths, you know, most of the day, and it wasn't. Although the tasks were enjoyable, just sorry, the job was enjoyable. The tasks often weren't,
Yeah.
you know, and so that whole thing, I was kind of, I lost a little bit of faith in the industry. There was a few people that clashed with my ego, I guess, you know, and there were factors that were starting to push me out of not only television but Sydney.
Yep.
And then when I met this person and she told me about this amazing job, that was really the catalyst, and that was all I needed as a push, as a motivator. And then a month later, literally a month after I had that conversation, I was up here shooting family portraits on a tropical island, Daydream Island.
So good. And what I've taken from that is it's important to see the signs and then be decisive, right?
That's right.
Like life will continue to push you in directions. Like even just me coming back to sport with the podcast, with elements of my business,
Right.
everything was showing me that was the case. I'm getting
Right.
more people asking me to work with their young athlete. I'm getting more conversations around sport are happening. I'm getting people pointing me in that direction. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I should be paying attention to this.
Right.
So I love how you've described that. And I imagine that would have been the case with the cyclone as well. Even though it was horrendous and the aftermath immediately must have been shocking, it sounds like it's put you into a place now where you're utilizing all your skill sets. You've got the photography element, you've got the customer service element, you've got the administrative element, all of these parts of your history that are now blending together to create the magic that you do now.
Well, this is what I said earlier. You're learning different skills as you're growing up,
Yeah.
and owning your own business is a combination of putting those skills together, basically.
Yeah.
So I often wonder where we would have been if Cyclone Debbie didn't occur, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question to that is, I don't know. The answer to that question, sorry, is I don't know. I guess I'd still be pursuing something that I enjoyed and loved. That's let's put it that way.
Given. Yeah.
That's a given, because that's just the type of person I am. But whether it would be, because we are in transport, we have a transport company. So whether it would be in transport and photography, I don't know, right? But I can guarantee you this: we'd be having a bloody good time figuring it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the key, mate. The journey is part of the whole experience. Not just getting there. You got to have fun in that journey as well, and learning things about yourself.
Love that. It's got to be fun. And I'm sure you speak to people, maybe even people that come up there on holiday, that they feel tied to a job that they do not love and is not fun. Because like what you described, Fox Sports, it was a great job. Exactly like you described, which is some of the tasks weren't so good. Some of the personalities could have been challenging. I think that's true for most jobs, but you have a choice, right? You have a choice to continue in an environment that perhaps is not filling you up, or to follow something that's going to be more aligned to what you really want to do, which is going to be fun and going to be fulfilling. And how long are you going to wonder? I love how you described it. Life was pointing in that direction. Within a month, you were up there. Life-changing, right?
Life-changing. And, sure, I was lucky enough to have that conversation with that person at the right time. But, people say you make your own luck. My attitude was leaning towards that path anyway, something different.
Yeah.
And so I was looking. If someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm a butcher and I love being a butcher," I probably would have ended up being a butcher. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's the it's the application to the attitude, So you've got an attitude, and you apply whatever comes your way, as long as you see that there's a possibility, a good possibility that you might actually find some happiness. Could have been anything, mate. And that's the beauty of life. It could have been anything.
It could have been, but what I know about how the brain works is that when there's a certain topic or area that we are focused on, then we tend to have conversations. We attract the conversations around us because our subconscious is filtering out all the other stuff and drawing you towards what it is you want. And to me, I'm going to say it again because it's really important for the listeners. Being able to recognize the signs and then acting on it is one of the key parts, because there's so many opportunities if you're recognizing. There's so many opportunities if you're open to them, and that's how you start attracting those conversations. I've had the amount of conversations that have sprung up in opportunities now around this space that I'm working because of following the nudges and changing direction has been unbelievable. But that's what's possible when you're open to doing things different, which is exactly as you've described through not just that part of your journey, but the whole way along.
And that's without trying to be philosophical, I guess that's the key to life. Just being open to things.
I like philosophical. It's good. Hey, I'd like to ask this question, if I can squeeze it in, and that's around the sometimes mystical space of being in the zone. So twofold question. One, can you remember a moment on the sporting field where just everything unfolded perfectly? and then same in business where maybe that's shown up again?
Yeah, I talked about an injury that I had um, early in my career. I was 23 and I had a knee reconstruction. And at the time, I was playing second division football in New South Wales. And I was in good form. I was really never played the sport as well as I did at that time of my life, you know. And I was really in the zone. I didn't have. Have you ever played? Have you been on the field and you didn't have to think about what you had to do? You just did it,
Yeah.
and it just all comes naturally. Not only that, your connection with your teammates was such that, mate, it was like, you know,
Yeah.
you had ESP. You knew what they were going to do. They knew what you were going to do, and
Yeah.
it just all happened. And for the first, I think it was the first 4 rounds of that particular season. That was happening. Then I had an injury, so I had to have knee reconstruction. The surgeon at the time was um, the he was the official NRL knee surgeon at the time.
Oh, Nathan Gibbs, was it? Or?
No, the name escapes me. It'll come back to me, but I'll tell you in a sec.
Yeah.
And it took me 18 months to get back on the field, not to get back to kick a ball, basically, to even think about getting. So 18 months, 6 weeks in bed without moving. I had my knee brace at 90 degrees for 6 weeks.
What?
Yeah, 6 weeks. And then I had to slowly rehabilitate myself, so basically just build up that muscle again, because the leg was just bone, you know, skin and bone.
What age was that?
I was 23.
Yeah, right.
Prime of your life, prime of your sporting career, basically.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that happened, one of the best and worst things that happened after that was my coach at the time came. He came to visit me at home while I was, in this bed, stricken in this bed.
Yeah.
And he said to me, and I was playing in a team that had Australia players such as Mark Coussis played for Australia. There were a couple of NSL players playing this. So I was playing in a team with some really very, very high quality players.
Yeah.
And I was on the fringe. I was on the fringe of first division of the main team. And he said to me, next week I was picking you for starting 11.
What?
Right. That broke my heart.
I bet.
It broke my heart, but filled me with a sense of, wow, did I actually achieve that? I actually got to that level. There was my coach was actually, contemplating putting me in a team with ex Socceroos, ex NSL players, ex blah blah blah. And that was one of the greatest achievements that I can remember, lying in bed.
Yeah, wow.
On my back. So yeah, there was that, and then that rehabilitation. But the one point you're talking about was the first game back. As you know, any good coach will welcome you back in the team and tell you that you've just started, you're training well, but you're not going to go straight into the first division. You sit on the sidelines in the reserve grade, blah blah blah. And I sat on the reserve grade bench, on my first game back, and it was 2-2. I remember the day perfectly, 2-2, and it was the last 10 minutes, and he did the whole thing, and come on, start warming up. She had a big knee brace on at the time, and I got on the field, and lo and behold, starting attacking, very tight match, had some space on the edge of the box. The ball comes to me, and I just looked up, and I was at home ground with the home support behind the goal. And I just picked my spot in the top corner of the far post, and I hit it so well that it just went straight, sailed into the corner, pigeonholed it where the spiders live.
Goosebumps.
And won the game 3-2. And I remember running off after scoring the goal, and I looked back, and the whole team was just chasing me, and they literally just stacks on. Bam! I was under there for 20 seconds. I thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. But it was the one single moment that I remember. Shit, what an achievement to come back from such adversity to
Yeah.
think. And I Merv Cross, I asked Merv, Dr. Cross, would I ever play football again? And he said, it's up to you. But yes, the knee's perfect. After I've looked at it, the knee's perfect. And to be honest, Ian, the
Yeah.
knee after, I got back to state league and I played 13 years in state league after the knee reconstruction. Not a single problem with it.
Wow.
So he did a very, very good job.
He did a good job, but also instilled that belief in you that it was going to be fine, right?
True, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. You stuck to your guns there in those grades, even though I tried to nudge you and come and get you to play for the Mighty Eagles a couple of times. But
I remember that. Was it Normanhurst? Normo?
it was,
It was Normanhurst. Yeah, right there. I
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
I
Because you
think
did
I
have a
may have
couple of
played.
years. Say again, sorry.
I think I may have played against your club once because I played for North Sydney Bears for a bit, for
Yeah,
one or two
right.
seasons. And I remember playing against Normanhurst, and I always wondered whether you were still at the club, but I don't know whether you were or not.
No, probably not. But I do remember playing against the team at North Sydney. But
Yeah, right.
probably, yeah, yeah, I love that, and those moments. Like I could just see the joy in your face when you're recalling that. Like that's part of what sport can do, right? Like those goosebump moments where and as you described with your teammates, right? There's nothing like that moment where everyone's coming together because you've just won a game from nowhere. So good. Have you had that happen in business where not necessarily that same euphoria with the finish, maybe, I don't know, but where it just things started to unfold, where everything just sort of fell into place, you picked your mark, so to speak, and just hit it?
Well, the parallels are there. The knee reconstruction. You can look at it as, from a philosophical point of view, as the Cyclone Debbie.
Yeah.
Setback, major setback. Yeah, mate, absolutely. The fact that we've now running a successful business up here, and talking about that bucking the trend, we didn't go down the typical path. We started a business that hadn't been started before. We took that risk. First couple of years were tough, mate, really tough. Begged, stole, and borrowed to keep alive, especially through COVID.
Yep.
But to come out the other side of that and actually have a business that's financially viable and a going concern is an achievement that I look back with pride. And I continue to build the business up. I want it to be better and better and better and better. So there's no pivotal moment, but it's building. It's a building process. And one day I'll look back and whether we're successful financially or not, I'll always know that this venture was successful in that it brought us happiness.
Yep.
It brought us autonomy. We didn't have to answer to anyone. We made our own decisions. We took our own path, and we are our own people. And no one can take that from us, mate. No one.
Oh, I love it, love it, and we'll make sure we get your links in the show notes there. So if anyone's heading up to Early Beach for the Whitsundays and they need some to be shown around, then yeah, hit up Anthony and he'll be able to steer in the right direction, right?
As long as they're happy to have their ear chewed off, because I'm very proud of this. I'm proud of this region, and I love showing people that have never been here before what this region can offer. It
Awesome.
is the most beautiful place in the world to live. There are so many great restaurants, so many places to visit, so many islands that just paradise, paradise, idyllic island settings, wherever you look, wherever you go. And so if you haven't been up here to the Whitsundays, Early Beach before, please, give me a call. Let me know if you're coming up. I'll look after you, definitely.
Love it, love it. I absolutely will. By the way,
Absolutely.
Anthony, great to see you again and chat with you again. Been way too long, and I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your story. Thanks, mate.
Mate, my absolute pleasure. And let me just say, what you're doing in your career is it's awe-inspiring, mate. The fact that you're helping others make sense of what's going through their heads, what they've learned through the past, what they're going through, what they're feeling, is a very important thing. The more people like you we have in the world, the better, mate. Let me tell you from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate that, brother. Some really powerful lessons there today from Anthony. The lesson that I highly recommend adding to your game plan for your life is the gift of change, especially if it comes in some of the darkest moments in your life. Know that there is always opportunities. There's always an upside on the other side of those changes, as brutal as they can be. And I want to read what he said just to remind you. If you don't embrace change, you're holding yourself back from what you can truly become. How are you supposed to know what you're best at if you only pursue one path? So get out there, try things, embrace changes. And if you would like a resource to help you, I've got this great little resource I learned some years back, Creating Changes. It's a simple PDF. You literally plug in your details and away you go. So if you want that, let me know and I'll email it straight to you. Have an awesome day. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.